We have a lot to cover tonight, so I don't really want to waste any time. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is simply the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler, much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, the aforementioned Twitter and Instagram, where I put some research out today for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I will also have my betting cards over on Twitter. So if you want to see the research that I did today for the Arnold Palmer, or you want to see my betting card this week for the Arnold Palmer and the Puerto Rico, give me a follow over there at Twitter and Instagram for the research. And then the link to my Twitch channel is also in the description. This is where I do a lot of my research, very in-depth. Listen to some music, pretty laid-back atmosphere, but I try to find the patterns for the previous winners, really dig deep, and all of that stuff. Also look at odds boards and stuff. Twitch is also where I do most of my baseball content, gaming, and other things of that nature. So if you want to see that content, give me a follow over there at Twitch. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. How much did you look at the odds boards today? Did you make any wagers? I know I certainly have. Looking forward to an exciting week at Bay Hill. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Arnold Palmer Invitational. And we're going to start over at WinFinder. And not really much to update in terms of the forecast. Thursday looks to be pretty heavy in the afternoon in terms of wind, but then Friday and Saturday is absolute mayhem. So just reiterating that you are going to want to focus or have some attention paid to wind in your thought process early on this week in terms of wagers or early looks in DFS. So I'm going to close out of that. We're going to head straight into Fantasy National, and you'll see that I have the filters for moderate and windy conditions set. So since the beginning of 2022, your top performers in moderate and windy conditions have been Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Keegan Bradley, Rory McIlroy, Xander, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Let's see. Other things that we can also look at. We know that Bay Hill is over 7,400 yards. Does not quite reach 7,500, but still will comfortably play into the long course narrative. So, since the start of 2022, your top performers on long courses have been Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, Rory McIlroy, Jason Day, Nate Lashley, Shane Lowry, and Keegan Bradley. Quite a bit of overlap here. Obviously, Scheffler, Rahm, Sung Jae. I believe Rory was in there for wind. So these are your premier players, especially on long courses. Generally, majors are the longest courses on the year or of the year. So your major favorites are going to rise. But the overwhelming filter for the week is going to be scoring relative to par being difficult, as when we look historically at the past 3 years here at Bay Hill, all but one round has been difficult. And I see nothing changing, especially with the amount of wind they are expecting this week. The rough is long. The greens have always been lightning. So, very difficult challenge this week for the players. So, when a round is difficult, since the start of 2022, your top performers in that scenario have been Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Will Zalatoris, Keegan Bradley, Shane Lowry, Sung Jae, Max Homa, Jon Rahm, and Justin Thomas. Again, a whole lot more overlap here. Rory, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Sung Jae, I believe, has been all three of these metrics. Justin Thomas was in number 1 for the win. He's now number 10 in difficult, so he's been on 2 of the 3. Fitzpatrick, I think, has been there for 2 of the 3. So, again, very similar players across all 3 of these filters. Something that I want to do very, very quickly is I'm going to change the view to Microsoft Excel. Again, just very, very quickly. We're not going to go to Microsoft Excel yet, or that portion of the show. But I'm going to show you a little bit of the research that I did today over on Twitch. And even though these have been consistently lightning Bermuda speed greens at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, I want you to take a look and notice the putting form coming into previous winners' wins at the Arnold Palmer. So you can see Scotty Scheffler gained 4.3 last year on the greens, but look at his putting form coming in. Very, very strong. Bryson, maybe not the best, but again, he gained 3.6 the week prior, or the tournament prior to the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Now, the WGC Mexico happened to be on POA. Genesis is on POA. Tournament of Champions is on Bermuda, but it's on Velcro Bermuda. So we don't have a whole lot of lightning speed greens to line up with the Arnold Palmer. But I'm trying to get you to focus on the immediacy of the form coming in for these players that have won. Terrell Hatton, when he won in 2020, gained his previous time out. We don't get the strokes gained data for any tournament held outside continental U.S. So WGC, HBC, China. This was in Korea, so we won't get those. But the one tournament we do have from Terrell Hatton that year, he gained. Again, the tournament before, Francesco Molinari gained. Now, Rory in 2018 lost 4.2 the week prior, but he had also had some amount of success leading into it, including at the Honda. You see Mark Leishman was completely on a heater with his putter. Same for Jason Day in 2016. And it's a pretty common trend. Matt Every in 2015, even though he had lost the tournament prior, he had at least had some good form coming in. Matt Every in 2014, a whole lot of putting form coming in. Tiger, bunch of form coming in. Tiger, bunch of form coming in. So instead of looking at just lightning speed Bermuda greens, as I bring us back to Fantasy National here, I'm going to go the last 12 rounds. I just want in the immediacy who has putt the best lately. Because we saw that some of these courses, they don't line up necessarily even on Bermuda. Some of these players were playing the Genesis, which is POA, WGC Mexico, POA. Some were playing the Honda, which is fast and lightning Bermuda. So it doesn't have to be just fast and lightning speed Bermuda greens, but putting form has been a big deal coming in, at least for the winners. So in the last 12 measured rounds, your top performers on the greens have been Max Homa, Jason Day, Sam Ryder, Peter Malnati, Nick Taylor, Adam Shank, Eric Cole, Sam Burns, Seamus Power, and Ben Taylor. Now, these are some big long shots, yes. But you also have got some favorites sprinkled in here. Max Homa, Jason Day. Last I saw, Sam Burns was about medium price, 50 to 1. Seamus Power. So I wanted to look at the hottest putters coming in to Bay Hill this week. And we can get a very, very good look at that in a statistic that I very rarely, or a report that I very, very rarely use, and I still use the wrong thing. I'm going to go to this rolling report, and we're going to look at strokes gained putting. and we're gonna see who has been the hottest lately. I'll sort it on the last 4 rounds, but generally speaking, you're going to want to really be green in these areas here, the last 12, 8, 4. You might have a little bit of a dip here and there. We saw that past winners at Bay Hill haven't even come into the tournament gaining their last time out, but they had at least had a tournament or two, if not more, where they had really been good on the greens, not too far into the distant past leading into the Arnold Palmer Invitational. So again, putting quite a bit of focus in the 4, 8, and 12. Max Homa, Ben Taylor, Eric Cole, Sam Ryder have all been good. Now Ben Martin is getting better and better over the last 12 to 8 to 4. You got Peter Malnati. Thomas Detry has gotten better from 12 to 8 to 4. Andrew Novak has been solid. Tom Hoagie's gotten better from 12-8 to 4. Chris Kirk's solid. Sam Burns. So make sure you give these players an extra boost in your consideration, whether you are wagering or early leans in DFS. Because we've seen that putting form especially is a pretty big factor at the Arnold Palmer. So with that, I'm going to bring this back to a regular view, so to say. Okay, with that, let's take a look at some other metrics here a little bit. Again, don't want to go too much into it. Want to look at a lot of the things from prior leaderboards and whatnot. But I will narrow this in to the beginning of the PGA Tour season. Your top strokes gained approach players since the start of the PGA Tour season have been Tom Hoagie, John Rahm, Ricky Fowler, Tony Finau, Xander, Gary Woodland, Nick Hardy, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler, and Tom Kim. Looking at around the green, we've got Justin Thomas, Hideki, Christian Bezadenhout, Ben On, Bo Hostler, Robbie Shelton, K.H. Lee, David Lipsky, Tom Kim, Scott Piercy, and Wyndham Clark. I do think around the green is going to be a decent factor this week. And then we talked about putting. So I don't think I want to do anything in terms of specifics with around the green or approach difficult or long rough or anything to that effect. Let's just go straight into evaluating some of these prior leaderboards. And this is last year's Arnold Palmer, with Scotty Scheffler being your winner. I'll highlight the top 25 here. You'll notice that everybody all except one player was positive in terms of around the green. All but one were positive in approach. Every single player that finished in the top 10 were positive in putting. Putting kind of fell off towards the bottom half of the top 25, if you will, or mid-range of the top 25. But everybody in the top 10 was positive in terms of putting. If we sort on these various statistics, we see Scotty Scheffler was negative. Okay, a little bit here, but nothing too crazy. You got a middling finish from K.H. Lee, middling to decent from Will Zalatoris. Off the tee's okay, 5.1 was the leader, 8.1, and your winner led in that category, so quite a bit of emphasis on strokes gained approach, and you see a lot more correlation than you do from off the tee. Hopefully that is obvious here with the finishing positions. So there's the tee, off the tee, there's the approach. Around the green, not as much. But you do have higher numbers total than off the tee. 6 here versus a 5.1, but not as much correlation. And then the putting we saw pretty darn strong. You got a middling to clunker maybe from JJ Spawn, and then otherwise a lot of solid correlation up here. That was last year's. We'll check 2021. Strokes gained. Again, let's see. This is the top 20, just due to ties. We have, again, only one player in the top 15 or so that was negative and around the green. Same with approach. Putting a little bit more consistent. Off the tee is a 7, and your winner led in that category. But again, look, you have missed cuts pretty high up with the off the tee. But your winner did lead in off the tee, Bryson. 7.1 in approach. Other than Tyler Duncan's clunker of a made cut, a lot of strong correlation here. Third, second, fourth, 4 straight top 10s, a win and a top 20, round out the 10 best players that were in strokes gained approach that week. Around the green, decent, I suppose. Got a couple of middling finishes from Ben On and Kevin Na. Your winner wasn't terribly high up in terms of strokes gained around the green. And then putting, pretty darn strong. Zach Johnson was middling, but above him, the top 5, all top 25. A little bit further down, too, pretty strong. Hey, Darnell, evening. How is it going? Have you made any wagers? Do you have any early leans for DFS? But thanks for jumping in chat. You are not too late. I did do a little bit of review, so if you missed it, make sure you go back and check the beginning of the show as putting form. And not necessarily just on Lightning Bermuda greens, but putting form is a big deal here at Bay Hill. Zalatoris, 30-1. I don't hate it. I don't know if I like Zalatoris enough compared to others around his price. I fired off Fitzpatrick at 35 when it came out this morning. Woodland's pretty sneaky. Woodland really likes long courses. He generally plays well in the wind, and it's supposed to be very windy this week. So I don't hate that actually at all. Woodland could be sneaky. Nothing against Zalatoris, but I think I prefer others around his price point, or at least in the wager market. But there's a look at 2021's leaderboard and strokes gained. So let's go back to 2022, and we'll start with driving. Fitzpatrick neck injury, kind of worrisome. Yeah, I mean he's played enough though. I think that it shouldn't be too big of an issue, and he loves this place. He really loves this place. But you're not wrong. If you're scared off with the injury, then that's a logical, reasonable thought process to have. Absolutely. I believe he's healthy and coming to a course that he really, really plays well. Let's take a look at some driving metrics from a couple of these prior years. And we noticed in Microsoft Excel last night that distance might be a factor this week. You see the distances that are here. This is the top 19, just due to ties. There's not a lot of big numbers in the negative other than Graham McDowell. So your leader or your winner was fairly high up. I don't think he was terribly high in distance, maybe 12th or so. But 2 top 15s to lead it, a top 10, top 20. Not the strongest from last year, I will give you that. It is not the strongest in terms of correlation, but it is also not nothing, considering most of these players in the top 19 were positive in distance. Fairways, you see, as much as the rough is penal here, some players that performed very well weren't very good at hitting fairways. So that's pretty interesting to see. You'll see good drives gained is pretty darn positive for most of these players. Now, your winner wasn't very good in good drives gained, probably due to the fact of the fairways. If we sort on it, very, very high correlation up at the top part of the leaderboard. Certainly more than distance, I would say. Good drives. Not as much as fairways, to be honest with you, even though these are bigger numbers in here. Greens, not as much. Okay, so nothing much there in terms of driving in 2022. If we look at 2021, we saw that Bryson led in distance. You also had Rory. Homa and Fleetwood were also top 10s. So you had some decent correlation here. You had the miscut from Wyndham Clark, but you had a lot of stellar performances in here as well. Fairways, not a whole lot. I mean, you got some drastically large negatives here in terms of fairways. -5, -7, -5. I don't see a whole lot of correlation there. Not really. Good drives. Again, we've got a player that it's labeling 0. It's slightly under 0, but let's just call it what it is. Field average, and you have a -1 and a -2. But almost everybody else in the top 20 were positive in good drives gained. Matt Wallace sitting down here at a -6. But if we sort on it, now see, this is a lot more correlation than what we saw in 2022 in terms of good drives gained. And that would seem to make sense since the rough is long here. It's penal to play out of. The greens are difficult to hit just due to the fact that the course is difficult and it's long. Good drives gained seems like it would make a lot of sense. And we'll check the greens, but your top 2 performers in greens and regulation were your first and second place performers in 2021. However, we saw that greens didn't really matter in 2022. So maybe 2020 will give us some clarity, or maybe it'll just make it as clear as mud. Again, for as much as you see distance red here, -1.1 over 4 rounds, it's essentially field average. 15.6, 10.6, that's a little bit under, but not drastic by any means. This is the top 17, again, just due to ties. We have quite a few players that are positive in terms of distance, and the ones that are negative, other than maybe Tom Hoagie, are pretty darn close to average, or field average. So I don't know, distance might be something. I don't know if I'd have a lot in it, but as of right now, it seems like it would be something. Again, this is a 3rd straight year. Look at good drives gained. Only 1 player negative in good drives gained. Only 1 player negative in terms of greens. So if we look at good drives, we sort on it. You got a clunker from Ben On, middling from Sam Burns. But you got a lot of success up here too. Top 5, 2 top 10s, 3rd, a couple of more top 10s. Now your winner was a little further down, but that's fairly strong. It's fairly strong. Greens, we have a lot of the same, really. The winner was a little bit higher up. Again, the clunker and the middling. Top 35 is actually not terrible. That's more middling. But I'm seeing greens here. Greens and maybe good drives gained. Maybe a little bit of distance for the Arnold Palmer, what's mattered at least the past 3 years. So I'm going to go ahead and set this on birdies and bogeys. But we'll look at this year's field, and we'll move to driving statistics. And there's a lot of different ways we can look at this. Right now, I don't have any filters. I just have it set at the beginning of the PGA Tour season. Your top, let's go with good drives gained. And in fact, I'm going to expand the timeline. Let's go with good drives gained when it's difficult. We'll also look at good drives gained when it's long. Maybe even good drives gained when it's windy. But Let's start with good drives gained and greens. So when a round has been difficult since the start of 2022, your top good drives gained players have been Shane Lowry, Tom Hoge, Corey Connors, Tony Finau, Sung Jae, Alex Smalley, Xander, Kevin Streelman, Grayson Sigg, and Billy Horschel. And for those who might need a reminder or are not in tune with heavy statistics for golf, a good drive is defined as the player has hit the fairway or they hit the green or fringe in regulation within 15 feet if they're on the fringe of the hole, if they didn't hit the fairway. So the player has either hit the fairway or they hit the green in regulation, and another slight caveat. So it's a nice metric to look at when you're looking at maybe fairways or greens. It's a pretty good combination of both. But good drives gained, there's a look at your top performers in that regard when a round has been difficult in the past 14 months. If we just kind of scan across here, other players or players that are top 10 in both good drives gained and greens in regulation gained when it's difficult: Shane Lowry, Corey Connors, Tony Finau, Sung Jae, Alex Smalley, and Xander Schauffele. Those are the players that are top 10 in both good drives gained and greens. We'll give an honorable mention here to Tom Hoge. He's second in good drives, 17th in greens. Honorable mention here to Billy Horschel, 10th and 11th. Honorable mention to Jon Rahm, 12th in good drives, but first in greens. Two more honorable mentions here. Adam Schenk, 16th and 10th. Luke List, 20th and 14th. Gary Woodland, 20th and 15th. So, good stuff there. Not sure I'm going to do much with scrambling, as when we looked at the course breakdown last night in Fantasy National, scrambling, although it is slightly less, or players are slightly less successful scrambling here than the other tour events, it's nothing drastic. So it doesn't scream to me that it would be a very big factor, scrambling specifically. I just think it's going to be around the green. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of these metrics in a couple of different ways. Let's look at good drives and greens on long courses. So when a course is long, defined as over 7,400 yards on Fantasy National, on those courses in the past 14 months, your top good drives gained players have been Martin Laird, Colin Morikawa, Alex Smalley, Tom Hoge, Aaron Rai, Corey Connors, Nate Lashley, Sung Jae, Jon Rahm, Adam Hadwin, and David Lingmerth. So quite a different list of names here. Martin Laird, Aaron Rai, Nate Lashley. Although I think Nate Lashley is at Puerto Rico. And again, I don't like to go to the DraftKings page, only because I don't want to have the pricing kind of skew my vision of things. But we might need to go there. But Jon Rahm, Sung Jae, Corey Connors, Tom Hoge, Alex Smalley, all of these players were high in the good drives gained when it was difficult as well. So if we scan across here, the majority of these players that were top 10 in good drives are also top 10 in greens. The only one that isn't is Tom Hoge. Hoge's actually been very poor in greens on long courses. Hadwin and Lingmerth are also outside the top 10, but not nearly as bad as Hoge. So Laird, Morikawa, Smalley, Rai, Connors, Lashley, Sung Jae, and Jon Rahm. All of those players are top 10 in both good drives gained and greens in regulation gained on long courses in the past 14 months. All right. We took a look at strokes gained total in the wind, so I don't think I want to do anything specific with greens or good drives in the wind. I think strokes gained total will pretty much handle that. But I think that is what I'm going to be looking at in terms of in terms of driving statistics, good drives and greens, more than likely. Just resetting this. Let's move on over to prior leaderboards and take a look at some scoring metrics, birdies, bogeys, doubles, and whatnot. Oh, come on, Fantasy National. All right, so last year, your winner was higher in birdies, Hovland higher in birdies, Horschel, Hatton, Kirk. So all five of your top 6 players were higher in birdies gained. Also, of the players that finished in the top 19, only one was negative in birdies gained, but it was a very large number in the negative for birdies gained. He avoided bogeys like crazy and avoided doubles as well. Let's see if we sort on it. You got a few higher finishes here for players that were so good at getting birdies. Take a kind of quick snapshot of the numbers there, and then we'll take a look at bogeys. And a lot more double-digit and higher numbers in the bogeys. So for 2022, it was more so about the birdies, it looks like. Double bogey avoidance. Something, but not direct in terms of correlation. We've got 2021, higher in bogey, essentially even bogey, 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 bogey. So in 2021, 6 of your top 7 were higher in terms of bogey avoidance than birdies gained. And looking at the top, we'll do the top 20, just due to ties. Unlike last year, 2 years ago, only one player was negative in terms of bogey avoidance, whereas you had a few players in terms of birdies gained that were negative. You have a 21st, 49th, 26th, but fairly strong there. A lot more double-digit finishes, but the first miscut you get to the bogey avoidance isn't until down here at Dylan Fratelli. So it's actually off of your screen. Let's see, your last person you see is Casey. So yeah, Fratelli's down here as a miscut, whereas in the birdies you have a miscut up all the way up here from Sam Burns. Pretty close. I think I would give the edge to bogey avoidance in 2021. But look at the correlation here for double bogey avoidance. First, second, third, 10th, 18th, 10th, 4th, 10th, 35th. Might be another week. Double bogey avoidance might be something we want to look at. Let's do 2020, see if we can't break the tie. We've got 1 year that has had birdies more important, 1 year that's had bogeys more important. 2020, bogey, 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 birdie, birdie, bogey. Looks like it's bogeys, although it's fairly close. Oh my, look at that correlation. That's the strongest we've seen of anything tonight so far. So very strong correlation in the birdies gained there. Bogey avoidance. Strong, but not as strong, I think. Although your winner led in bogey avoidance, so that does account for something. Not as strong in the double bogeys avoidant. So, again, my assumption is birdies, it is bogeys, but it's close. It certainly is close. And when we're looking at scoring metrics, opportunities, eagles, birdies, bogeys, etc., I like to use the scoring filter, easy, difficult, all that stuff. So, win around's been difficult. In the past 14 months, Your top bogey avoiders in that scenario have been Rory McIlroy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Shane Lowry, Sung Jae, Scotty Scheffler, Tony Finau, Tom Hoge, Jason Day, Brendan Todd, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa, and Keegan Bradley. Matthew Fitzpatrick and Shane Lowry are top 10, also in doubles avoided. If you're going to look at birdies, it goes Will Zalatoris, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Keith Mitchell, Keegan Bradley, Justin Thomas, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Chris Kirk, Max Homa, and Xander. So Will Zalatoris, number 1 in birdies gained when it's difficult. And not terrible when it's not terrible in the bogey avoidance either. So, okay. All right. Like I said, I've been going, I leaned Fitzpatrick, but Will Zalatoris being here for number 1 for birdies, he was also somewhere very high up in the driving page. Can't remember if it was good drives or greens, but I know he was up there fairly high there too. So might be onto something there, Darnell. I just gravitated towards Fitzpatrick because of the course fit. Let's see. I'm going to use the difficult filter when I'm looking at birdies and bogeys for my mixed condition model. But if you want to look at birdies and bogeys on long courses, your top bogey avoiders on long courses in the past 14 months have been Matt Fitzpatrick, Sung Jae, Nate Lashley, Gary Woodland, Shane Lowry, Scotty Scheffler, Brendan Todd, John Rahm, Tommy Fleetwood, Martin Laird, and Aaron Baddeley. And looking at birdies on long courses, Colin Morikawa, Bo Hostler, JT, Scotty Scheffler, Cameron Young, John Rahm, JJ Spawn, Adam Hadwin, Will Zalatoris, and Victor Hovland. Probably the first time we've said JJ Spawn tonight. I know it's the first time we've said Cam Young tonight. Bo Hostler as well. Okay. So that is what I'm seeing in terms of scoring. Let's look at proximity. I am quite anxious to see what proximity looks like because the majority of approach shots, 30% of them, come from 200 plus here. But I also have a feeling that total procs might be something. So again, looking at last year's leaderboard, top 19, you had only 4 players that were negative in procs total. A couple of them were really bad in total procs, but okay. Might be something. 200 plus, pretty strong. You got a terrible performance from Russell Henley in the 200 plus, but other than that, almost everybody is positive or relatively close. Hatton and Kirk are, they're kind of bad, I suppose. All right, procs total, a decent little amount of correlation. You do have miscuts from Streelman and Norlander pretty high up, but your winner was in the top 10 of the statistic. The worst made cut was a 42nd. Okay, it's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. 200 plus. Again, your winner wasn't up here. So not a whole lot. Or at least total procs looks like it's more correlating last year than the 200 plus was. 2021 proximity. I think this is where the 200 plus is really going to come in hand. Top 20 due to ties. Yeah, so like the total, gosh dang it. The total procs, don't mind me as I apparently just can't even highlight stuff tonight. Total procs, like a lot of your top finishers were negative, so that doesn't lead to a lot of confidence in that. You got a minus 8.9, that's essentially field average. Fleetwood minus 38, fairly close now. Matt Wallace was god awful from 200 plus. We still top 20'd. Your winner probably led in, no, he was 7th. So there's some huge numbers here in this Prox 200. Okay. But you still have a miscut fairly high up, but your winner's high up here. You got a couple of top tens. Okay. But you had a miscut even higher up in the total proc, so not something I would be extremely strong or confident in if we were only looking at 2021s. Lastly, 2020. Come on, Fantasy National. This is the top 17. Some decent performances in here again. Look, like the 100 to 125 was actually very strong that year. But total procs, not very strong at all, especially for the top total procs performers. 200 plus. I mean, you got some very solid performances here, but then you have 3 miscuts. So I don't know how I feel about the proximity. I just know that the majority of approach shots come from 200 plus here. And we saw that last night in the initial research show, but I will show it to you again. 200 plus. Pretty big deal. I am not sure if I'm going to use total procs. I know I'm going to use a little bit of 200 plus. So your top proximity players from 200 plus. I'll narrow this into the start of the PGA Tour season. Since the start of this PGA Tour season have been Gary Woodland, Sung Jae, John Rahm, Adams Vinson, Tom Hoagie, Patton Kizzire, Davis Riley, Justin Suh, Patrick Cantlay, and Tom Kim. So there's Gary Woodland for you. Again, I was looking at that 100 to 1 there, Darnell, earlier today. Didn't pull the trigger, but I think that's a pretty fair price. He's been very good at 200 plus and just total procs in general. Sung Jae, John Rahm. I imagine a lot of this is probably pretty close to the par 5 rankings in terms of strokes gained par 5. Might be different, but I know I'm going to be using some 200 plus. So there's a look at your top 200 plus proximity players. Been going for a while, and I don't want to rush through Microsoft Excel, so we'll come back to last year's leaderboard, and I'm going to be focusing on one specific length, the par 3, and we saw it last night in the initial research show. It's actually the 200 to 225. Now, yes, your winner was slightly negative, but look at every other range here in terms of players that were negative. It almost lines up with your total strokes gained par 3s. While you did have negative and then positive, it offsets with negative and then positive. So you had 4 players that were negative from 200 to 225. You had 3 players that were negative in terms of par 3s. And if we look at the amounts, you have a 4.1. Again, some pretty strong correlation here. Not a miscut until off of your screen. 4.1 total, 3.5. Now, Matt Wallace did miss the cut here, but otherwise, decent amount of correlation. Not as strong, sure. Hey, P, evening. How is your Monday? How's your week started? Thanks for jumping in chat. But you got a 3.5, a 2.3, and a miscut let it, so that you don't want any part of. And then the 225 plus, you got a miscut pretty high up. There's only one hole that measures 225 plus par 3 on the scorecard here. It's the second. You do have a 215 and a 221 that could reasonably probably stretch into the 225 plus. But you see the highest numbers, there's 1.8. 200 to 225 is doubling it at 3.6. I think it's going to be the 200 to 225 specifically. I'll check 2021 just for kicks and giggles, as they say. Again, look at your winner. Very high in the 200 to 225. Very high in the par 3s in general. Again, a lot of correlation here. Your winner led in the par threes. Your winner was second in terms of that specific length. 4.5, a 2.2, so already doubling that one, and a 1.5, so tripling that one. I think it's 200 to 225 that we're going to be focused on solely in terms of par threes. Did I just go to par fives? No, I went to par fours. Okay, so your top performers in par threes, 200 to 225 yards since the start of the PGA Tour season. Victor Hovland, Tom Kim, Patrick Rogers, John Rahm, Sam Burns, Sahith Theegala, Joseph Bramlett, Rory, Emiliano Grillo, and Mark Hubbard. Are you basing all of this off course history? Not all of my analysis. These are the prior leaderboards, but prior course history is a huge factor at Bay Hill. It is a huge factor, and I'll show you why when we go to Microsoft Excel. I really did a whole lot of intensive research on it today on Twitch, but I'll show you some of the highlights. But yes, in general, Bay Hill is one of the most correlating to success. If you've had prior success at Bay Hill, it leads to continued success. The Honda, in contrast to the Honda is so, I don't want to say random. It's so volatile. Some players will miss the cut at the Honda and then win the next year. That's not the case at Bay Hill. Bay Hill, you generally play well here or you don't. And that's why I'm so high on Fitzpatrick. But there's a look at your top par 3 performers, specifically from 200 to 225. Don't know how much par 3s are really going to matter. There will be some in the mixed condition model, but I'm not sure how much. Par 4s, look at that correlation. Just huge. Huge amounts of correlation. Nobody here, even though your winner's not in here, nobody here is worse than T32. Now, in Microsoft Excel, it was showing that the 400 to 450 is probably the highest in terms of actual strokes gained number. You got a 4.4 here and decent correlation, but not strong. 6.7. You do have a missed cut very high, but you also have a lot of top 10 and 15 finishes. You got a 6.6 and about the same correlation last year from 400 to 450 as you do 450 to 5. If we go to 2021, par 4s, not as strong in terms of the high numbers, in terms of the actual total number of strokes gained, but again, second, fourth. I mean, T26 is not a bad result at all. 4th, 8th. Your winner's a little bit further down here. You've got 4.5 and not a lot of correlation. 8.5 and very good correlation. 5.7. So again, the second year in a row, they're 400, 450 probably is a slight favor to 450 to 5, even though more holes fall between 450 to 5. Might just be one of those weird coincidences. But we're going to look at par 4s in totality and then maybe a little bit of 400 to 450. But since the start of the PGA Tour season, your top par 4 performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Jason Day, Max Homa, Taylor Montgomery, John Rahm, Thomas Detry, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau, Brian Harman, and J.J. Spawn. If you scan across to the specific length, meaning 400 to 450, Scotty Scheffler, Jason Day, Max Homa, Taylor Montgomery, John Rahm, and Tony Finau are top 10 in both total par 4 and par 4s 400 to 450. You get honorable mentions here in Thomas Detry, Patrick Cantlay, J.J. Spawn, Chris Kirk, Ben Griffin, Seamus Power, and Aaron Baddeley. Again, If there's a range, I think it's 400 to 450, but par fours, we saw just the sheer amount of correlation, and I'm just going to show you 1 year. It was last year's, but I mean, just the sheer amount of correlation here between par 4 performance and finishing on the leaderboard. So par 4s are going to be a thing. Par 5s are also going to be a big factor. Big factor. Now, just as a reminder, one par 5 measures to here. It is the eagle opportunity, the par 5 16th. All 3 other par 5s measure to here. So you would think it'd be the 550 to 6. But honestly, look here. You've got some pretty big numbers in this 0 to 500 in which no hole measures to this length on the scorecard. It's just when they move this one to, or moves it into this length due to moving the pins and moving the tee box. There's some pretty big numbers in here. But there's no holes that measure to this on the scorecard. So I'm thinking it's just par 5s in total. And you look, your winner led last year. You do have a miscut fairly high up, but again, 42nd, 38th, middlings, but top 15, top 20, 2nd, 5th, 9th, top 20, etc. Go to 2021, par 5s were a thing. 3rd, and then a clunker. Your winner was very high, 10th, 31st, 8th, 10th. Par 5s are a pretty big deal here at Bay Hill. And it doesn't look like there is a specific length. It's just par 5 performance. So your top par 5 performers since the start of this PGA Tour season have been John Rahm, Garrick Higo, Colin Morikawa, Kyle Westmoreland, Sungjae, Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, Davis Thompson, and Patrick Rogers. So I know it's not a complete corollary between the 200 plus proximities and the par 5s, because Gary Woodland's the number 1 200 plus proximity, and he's nowhere to be seen here on the par 5s. But Rahm's there. Morikawa, I believe, was top 10 in terms of 200 plus. He's also top 10 in par 5s. So it'd be interesting to see just how much correlation there is. It's not direct, or it's not as much as I thought there might be between 200 plus and the par 5s. But there's your top par 5 performers, and par 5s are going to be a big deal this week at Bay Hill. They usually are. All right, we've been going for a little while, and I still got a bit to show you in Microsoft Excel, so let's move there. First thing I want to do is I'm going to show you, let's just show you a little bit of the research I did over on Twitch earlier today. And to your point, or to your question, Darnell, this is what I call the winner matrix. And hopefully that is large enough for you all to see. I don't collect their performances after they've won. I want to see how players did, how they performed leading up to their win at Bay Hill, the year they won. So you see Scotty Scheffler won last year. He was 15th in 2020. So he's only played it twice, and he's played it very well. Bryson never missed a cut. 4th and a 2nd, and then wins. He had some, middling finishes, but also had played very, very well. Terrell Hatton had played very, very well. Molinari had played the course very, very well. Rory. Now, Leishman was the first time that you actually had a missed cut. This is all the way back in 2017. But look at the year prior to winning. He top 20. He had also had a top 5 earlier in his career at Bay Hill. Matt Every, for as much as it seemingly was random when he won twice, he had some decent success. He had a top 25 in 2012. Top 35 in 2013. And then LT Gray. Course performance is a huge deal here at Bay Hill. Huge deal. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the more important statistics and metrics, at least what the data is telling us. And you see strokes gained approach, the highest in terms of actual value. No surprise. This is a ball striking course off the tee. is slightly outweighing the around the green. However, this is a pretty low outlier for around the green. I do think around the green is going to have a say. So I will have some around the green metrics this week. And then I showed you the putting form of the winners coming into the Arnold Palmer week. Putting form is a very big deal, and that's a low outlier as well. So there is what it looks like without the low outliers. So we're gonna have a lot of approach. Around the green's gonna be in there. We're gonna have some putting form. Not necessarily just on Lightning Bermuda either. It's just straight up putting form. Moving to driving statistics. Distance is a factor here. And it's gradually gotten more and more important as well. Starts at 11, 13, 15, and then almost 18 last year. So it's gradually gotten more important. It is higher than the average full field course by 65%. It's going to be a big deal. Or I shouldn't say big deal. It is a factor. You see good drives is 2.5% more important. So we've got a couple of bigger numbers and a couple of lower ones. I don't like the fact that it is inconsistent. Because the bigger number, in fact, is in greens, but that's also a very large outlier. So I'm not quite sure where I want to go yet in terms of driving statistics. I can understand the argument for good drives. I can understand the argument for greens. And I'm pretty sure I'll have probably 5% in driving distance, as I've talked about. Scoring, birdies and bogeys. We've got a very low outlier here in birdies. But you see the bogeys has been, I can't say consistent, but it's still, even with the low outlier gone, it's still been more important. So I'm still thinking it's going to be bogeys avoided. And then double bogey avoidance has been somewhat solid. And it's been higher than the average full field course as well. You see birdies is at minus 18%. Bogeys about 4% more important. Double bogey avoidance almost 30% more important. So just like the Honda last week, I can envision myself using bogeys and double bogeys avoided when a round has been difficult. We move to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. This is a pretty low outlier for par 3s. But look at the totals here. You've got 1.25 in par 3s. Almost 80% of that is coming in one range. So with that being the case, I'm just focusing on this. I'm just focusing on this range. Might be slightly incorrect, but I'm going with my gut. I'm going with what the data is telling me. Now that is a fairly high outlier, to be fair. That's a fairly low one. But you're still more than half, even accounting for outliers. So I'm probably just going to be focusing on 200 to 225 par 3s, and that's why. Par 4s, again, the highest number is in the 400 to 450, and you got a pretty low outlier here. But it doesn't make up half of the total or half of the totality in par 4s. So I'm thinking it's just probably just total par 4s. Unlike the par 3s where this was 80% of your total, in the par 4s, you don't have any range that makes up even half. So I'm thinking it's just the par 4s. And it's similar for par 5s. You got a 1.9, 0.95, or 9.6, so it's making up exactly half. But this is a pretty high outlier, so when you remove that, it's not going to equal half. So looking like I'm going to use totality of par 5s, totality of par 4s, maybe 5% in 400 to 450, maybe, just because of this low outlier. And then the specific range of par 3s. And then when we go to proximity, you're seeing, I know these numbers don't mean a whole lot, but prox total, that's actually not a very high number. That's a pretty high number for 125 to 150. But look at this number in 200 plus. Now that's a pretty big outlier, but even so, when we scroll across for full field course averages, 200 plus proximity is still 45% more important. And the reason why I think prox total might be a small thing is it's still more important than the average full field course. Not by a lot, but a little bit. So that's why I know, gosh dang it, the 200 plus is getting cut off. I'm sorry. So 45% more important than 200 plus. 4% in total. I know I'm going to have 200 plus proximity. I don't know if I'll have total prox. I want to, but I'm probably going to be running out of percent very quickly. So there's a look at Bay Hill in terms of the raw numbers. Before we go to the early look file and see who's done well in what particular metric, let's take a look at last year's mixed condition model. And last year was okay. It was okay. The winner was 10th. I'll take that. My top 7 made the cut, and in the top 20, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 missed cuts. I try to aim for about 4 to 5, 20 to 25% missed cuts in my top 20. It's golf; anything can happen. So if you're hitting 20 to 25, or if you're hitting 75 to 80% cuts made at least in your top 20, you're doing okay. Especially if you have your winner and you have a lot of top finishes. So I do have the winner, but you see I've got a lot of middling finishes and clunker finishes in here. So that's why I'm saying it's an okay mixed condition model, but it certainly can be improved upon. So I had 15% in strokes gained approach. Seems reasonable. 15% in par 3s, that's way too high. I'm going to be lowering the percent, and I'm going to be focusing on just one specific range. So that's definitely going to change. At 15% in par 4s and par 5s, that also seems rather reasonable. There's 10% I'm straight getting back in this year's model. I'm not doing anything in terms of strokes gained total, but I looked at long courses as opposed to difficult. I had 10% in 400 to 450, so I did single out the same exact par 4 range. If anything, I'm going to do 5% this year, so there's some I'm getting back. I focused on lightning Bermuda greens, which I understand these greens have been classified as lightning every single round for the past 8 years. So I understand why I did it, but putting form is the more important factor. Just straight up putting form. And you'll see that here. Look at Scotty Scheffler. He had a lot of form coming in. Now, Bryson maybe not, but at least the tournament prior, he had gained a decent amount on the greens. Terrell Hatton gained the week prior, or the tournament prior. Molinari gained the tournament prior. Even though Rory hadn't or didn't gain prior, he also had a couple of tournaments where he did, including one that was a lot. Leishman gained a ton on the way to his win at the Arnold Palmer. Jason Day. Matt Every, even though he didn't have the most form in the immediacy, look at the entirety of the calendar year. Had a lot of form. So I'm going to be looking at putting form, not just lightning Bermuda. I also looked at opportunities gained when it was long. Good drives gained in long rough. Okay. And I had 5% 200 plus. That needs to rise. That needs to increase. Now, in terms of the specific metrics and how they were for predictive analytics, if we were to sort the leaderboard, meaning Scotty Scheffler on the first line, Victor Hovland on the second line, on down, I did this for the top 25. And these were the ranks of those players. So, of the players that finished in the top 25 last year, they averaged a 43.8 in being ranked in strokes gained approach. That's pretty good. That's pretty predictive. Par 3s was not very good, and we've talked tonight how it's going to need to be that specific range. Now look at the par 4s. Massive amount of predictability. 37th. Once you're getting into the low 40s and crossing the 40 threshold, that's a very strong predictor or very strong indicator. So par 4s was big. Par 5s was big. Strokes gained total was okay. Not great, but okay. The par 4s, 400, 450 were actually very, very strong, and that's why I'm a little bit more confident or feel okay with saying I need to probably put 5% in that range. Because it was pretty darn predictive, at least for last year. Putting, we've talked about it, probably needs to be, or it needs to be putting form, not just Lightning Bermuda. Opportunities gained wasn't good. Good drives gained wasn't good. But Prox 200 was. Prox 200 was a very good predictive statistic last year. So, that is how my mixed condition model worked and how I fared last year. So, talking through it with you all, knowing that I'm going to change some of this. I'm going to move some metrics around, definitely move some percentages around, and it can be improved upon. But now that we know what were good predictive metrics and what weren't, let's move to the early look file. Well, it's in here somewhere. There we go. Let's move to the early look file. I know we're running a little bit over time, but these are the statistics specifically at Bay Hill for the players that have played here the past 5 years. So let's do some sorting very quickly. Who's hit their irons the best here the past 5 years? Colin Morikawa. John Rahm, it's only 1 year, but it's John Rahm. There's your defending champion, Scotty Scheffler. Tom Hoagie's hit his irons here very well. There's Rory, your top strokes gained total performer the past 5 years here at Bay Hill. There's Gary Woodland. He's only played here once, but it was very good. There's Corey Connors, Max Homa. I also think the Euros have an advantage at these type of courses due to the courses they play and how U.S. players tend to shy away from. Yes and no. I think it is incorrect to do a broad generalization like that. It's a player by player case, but you're right. Players like Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, you are correct in that regard. Gary Woodland, they don't generally like to play the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It's a difficult course. Whereas you have John Rahm, who's only played it once, but somebody like Tyrrell Hatton has played it several times. He's played it every year the past 5 years. Mark Leishman, I know he's not Euro, but he's still an international. Tommy Fleetwood has played it. But, you do have your fair share of Americans like Keegan, who will play it year in and year out. Billy Horschel will play it year in and year out. Generally speaking, Harris English plays it year in and year out. So I don't think it's correct to do it on a broad generalization like that. You definitely have an individual case-by-case basis. As far as an advantage, I don't know, because you have to have a lot of length here at Bay Hill. The rocky, windy conditions, not necessarily just this course. Okay, yeah, I can see the windy thing, but like Gary Woodland plays very well in the wind too. So, I think it's just more of an individual case by case basis than a broad grouping. Not like John Rahm plays extremely well in the wind, but like somebody like Tommy Fleetwood, even though he's been very successful here, he actually doesn't necessarily play as well in the wind as you would think. But I have now sorted this on strokes gained putting. Here are your best putters at Bay Hill the past 5 years. Lucas Herbert, Gary Woodland. There's Beau Hossler. He's 4 for 4. Sung Jae has putt very well on these greens. Matt Fitzpatrick has putt well on these greens. Sam Burns, Bermuda Burns, Zach Johnson, Patrick Rogers, Bezadenhout, Tyrrell Hatton, former winner. Homa's putt well. So there's your top putters. Let me get through all of these statistics that I want to sort and then I'll get to that, Darnell, because you won last week. No doubt about that. You certainly won last week. Let's go. Again, I just don't know how much anything in the driving will matter. So let's look at bogey avoidance. Specifically here at Bay Hill. Again, your number one bogey avoider, Matt Fitzpatrick, the past 5 years here. Gary Woodland's been, in his 1 year, was very good at avoiding bogeys. There's Sung Jae, Jason Day, a former champion here. Rory, gosh dang it, I can't talk. Rory, your top strokes gained total player. Your defending champion's high up here in bogeys avoided. This is why I think bogey avoidance is going to be a big thing, because look at the comparison to birdies gained. Like Xander, Max Homa. Now Rory's been more even, but still slightly favoring the bogey avoidance. But Matt Fitzpatrick has had a lot of success here. Sung Jae, a lot of success. It's more bogey avoidance. Jason Day's a former champion. Bazayden, who's had a lot of success here. Fleetwood's had a lot of success here. Hostler's had a lot of success here. They're all doing it in the bogey avoidance as opposed to the birdies gained. That's why I'm higher on Fitzpatrick than Zalatoris, because Zalatoris is more going and getting the birdies as opposed to avoiding the bogeys. Let's take a look at some specifics in terms of par 3s, 4s, 5s, and 200 plus proximity. So again, we're just going to look at par 3s, 200 to 225. Look at that very quickly. Your top performers, Spieth, but it's been one time been on. Molinari, former champion. Rory, Victor Hovland, Adam Shanks 2 for 2. Sung Jae, Zach Johnson, Patrick Rogers. Now look here, Sepp Straka 0 for 3, has played this tournament like shit, but he's been good at the 200 to 225 par 3s. But there's your answer. He's been terrible at the par 4s. It's just off your screen. I think you can see the color. He's been terrible at par 5s as well. So that explains that. But there's some of your top performers in the past 5 years at the 200 to 225 par 3s. We'll look at 4s, 5s, and 200 plus proximity. Strokes gained par 4. Russell Henley, Herbert, Jordan Spieth. There's Chris Kirk. There's Bazayden, Woodland, Emiliano Grillo's 2 for 2 here. Rory, Sung Jae, Xander, although it's one time. Matt Fitzpatrick. Keith Mitchell has also had a lot of success here at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Your defending champion. Terrell Hatton, a former winner. Harris English, 4 for 4. Ches Rigby's 2 for 2, although pretty poor performances. Adam Shank, Tom Hoagie. We move to par 5s. Gosh dang it, come on. Par 5 performance, top performers. Again, there's your defending champion, Scotty Scheffler. Pendrith Baddeley was actually pretty good at par 5s his 1 year. There's Gary Woodland. He's been at the top of a lot of these metrics. You'd expect that since he finished 5th, but it's only one time, so I would want to see it again. But I do think it is a worthy speculative wager at 100 to 1 there, Darnell. Morikawa, Rory. Charlie Hoffman's 3 for 4 here. Don't overlook Charlie Hoffman. He generally plays well here. He might be a sneaky DFS play. Luke List is 3 for 4. Again, all in the ball striking. Fitzpatrick, Keith Mitchell, Molinari, Hatton, former winners. Dylan Fratelli's played fairly well here. There's Keegan, Bo Hostler. Last thing I want to sort for you all is the proximity 200 plus. Who has been the best, specifically here at Bay Hill, from 200 plus? Mackenzie Hughes is number 1. Granted, it is 1 year. There's Tom Hoagie. Will Zalatoris, very high in the 200 plus. There's Rory. Victor Hovland. KH Lee, high up in the 200 plus. Keegan, Grillo, Party Marty, Hideki. Interesting to say Seamus. He's only played here one time. It was really bad. I thought that might be a decent course for him, but he more plays better when it's short than long. Okay. Connors, Chris Kirk, Luke List, Kevin Streelman. So there's a look at the players and the specific metrics and who has done well at the key ones here at Bay Hill. Before I go, if anyone has any quick questions that you are wanting to see, I can certainly show you my thought process on your question and try to answer it. I think that the natural or easiest player versus player, since they are so close in odds, would be Will Z v. Matt Fitzpatrick. Darnell, if that's the route you want to go, I'm okay with that. I can do long shots if you want. Gary Woodland, I would say, is a long shot if you're 100 to 1 or more. But I think the most natural is Fitz versus Willie Z. But in the so we'll just say Fitz v. Willie Z, and we'll see who comes out on top in that regard. I think we're even. I don't know. I don't remember. I know you beat me handily last week. I know there's been tournaments in the past where specifically I think you were pretty down on Max Homa, and that's come back to bite you. So I think we're even. I don't really know. It's for fun anyway. But if somebody gets really far ahead, might have something small on the line there. But we'll call it even for now. In the in the comments of the video, let me know of any wagers that you've made or any early DFS leans that you have. Who are you gravitating towards? What kind of lineups do you think you're going to be using this week? And have any questions prepped for Wednesday night's DFS Tactics show. I'll be playing Moronk. I do like Lucas Herbert. Lucas Herbert is somebody that I've kind of keyed in on a little bit. Hopefully he is fairly unique. He's played okay here. I do like the Lucas Herbert shout there, Darnell. And a lot of that has to do with the short game. He was very, very good with the short game his one time here. I do like the Lucas Herbert shout. I've been keyed in on him as well. But as a reminder, I will be live tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Again, this time for Puerto Rico. It's a double tournament week. So I'll be doing heavy research tomorrow for the Puerto Rico Open in anticipation for tomorrow night's full Puerto Rico show. So if you want even more statistics and more wagers, more DFS than the Arnold Palmer can give you, take a look at the Puerto Rico. And there are a lot of good values at the Puerto Rico Open. Last I saw the tournament favorite was 16 to 1. You very rarely get tournament favorites in golf at 16 to 1. So you're going to have a lot of good values on the wagering board at Puerto Rico. So I will cover everything Puerto Rico tomorrow in the Puerto Rico full show. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then Wednesday will be the DFS Tactics show for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. And then Friday will be more Friday night chill stream. And we'll be getting into some baseball here fairly soon with spring training starting up. So I'm looking forward to getting into the baseball mindset as well. But double tournament week, all of the focus right now is on the Arnold Palmer and the Puerto Rico. So hopefully you stop by tomorrow for the Puerto Rico full show. But Darnell and P, thanks for jumping in chat. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun. Thanks for supporting the channel like you all have almost since the beginning. And I really appreciate it. And everyone else out there who watched and listened, liked the video, has subscribed, leaves comments, always appreciate it. Love what I do. And I'm glad that it is well received on your all's end. So for all of the wagers that you've made so far this week for the Arnold Palmer Invitational, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Puerto Rico full show, may all your bets be profitable.